Today is January 24th, 1994. I'm Blake Hailey, and we're pleased to have with us Dr. Thomas Yorio, the Dean of the Graduate Program here at the University of North Texas Health Science Center in Fort Worth. We're doing the videotaping in the Biomed Communications Center of the Gibson D. Lewis Health Sciences Library. Thanks, Dr. Yorio, for joining us today.
You're welcome.
I'd like to start out, if I could, perhaps you could, I know in 1975 you received your PhD and then did some postgraduate work there. What brought you to TCOM, and maybe some prior experiences with your graduate degree and so forth?
Well, I received my degree in biomedical sciences, which is sort of a multidisciplinary degree, although I specialize in pharmacology. And at the time when I was looking for a position, I felt that it was a good degree to have because I was able to look for positions in many different disciplines because it was a multidisciplinary degree. I was welcome in biochemistry departments, physiology, or pharmacology. So I had opportunities to join different places. Turned out that while I was looking for a position, after I had a postdoctoral position at Mount Sinai School of Medicine in New York, I came across an ad for the Texas College of Osteopathic Medicine. And to be honest, in New York City, there weren't many osteopathic positions and at that time in New York. This was before the New York School was developed. So I didn't know too much about the school. So I went to the library and did a little work to look up what osteopathic medicine was, and decided to send my CV out to TCOM. And also at the same time, there was the New Jersey School, this was in 1977, was opening. I also sent an application there, as well as some other schools throughout the country. And my visit, I was selected to come give a seminar and visit with TCOM, and at the time I came, the Medical Education Building 1 was just a hole in the ground. And I probably was one of the last people to give a lecture in what was then the bowling alley where the school kind of started, or was at least partly taught, in a previously building that was a bowling alley. And I gave a lecture there to the medical students as well as a seminar and research. And I was impressed with the vision of the school. And I was also impressed with Texas because at the time I was interviewed in January. It was January, I think, 17th, and 1977. And it was 13 degrees in New York City, and when I got off the plane in Fort Worth, Dallas-Fort Worth Airport, it was 60. So I thought I died and went to heaven when I got off on that airplane. So that was a very good positive impact on me coming from New York City. And at that time, the basic science departments were located on the Denton campus on the University of North Texas. And we primarily visited that institution, and the subsequent day I came down to visit the TCOM campus where we gave the lecture and met some individuals. But the basic science departments were still housed in Denton. So I went back with a very positive attitude about osteopathic medicine and the school, and subsequently made a choice and a decision to come to TCOM.
Sounds like definitely the climate was a very important thing. It sounds like over the other schools of choice.
Well, I had a few other southern schools that I was considering, but it definitely was a good impact in terms of the city, Denton being a college campus type city, and also Fort Worth. I was impressed with the city and the arts that were nearby, and it was impressive.
Now so then you taught the basic science courses at North Texas State University, which at that time, right, and the students from TCOM were there.
At the time I arrived, at the time I arrived, by the time I came, we were in fact lecturing more down in Fort Worth than up in Denton. Although we were housed physically in terms of our office space and research space up in Denton, we came down to the Fort Worth campus to give lectures. And about that time, the school had rented a facility over near the Trinity River, and I'm trying to remember the name of that facility over there. Escapes my mind, but the building right by the river, it'll come to me. But anyway, they had a nice new building with a lecture hall, and we used to lecture there. But then we'd have to drive back to Denton to our office and our laboratories. And at the time in Denton, I was in a laboratory. My research laboratory was in a converted dormitory room, Terrell Hall. And the joke was we used to call it Terrible Hall because every time someone tried to run an experiment or turn on a heavy piece of equipment like a centrifuge, the lights would go out. So it was very difficult at times to maintain your research because particularly Dr. Lacko, every time he ran the ultracentrifuge, we'd have a blowout. So it was kind of a running joke that we'd have to make sure what Dr. Lacko was doing that day before we started any experimentation. But that only lasted a short period of time before we moved down into, now I remember the name of the place, the River Plaza campus, which was next to Trinity River there. And we had a facility, a temporary research facility and office space. And it was quite interesting being over there for a while, before Medical Education Building 1 was ready in 1978.
And then you moved into Med Ed 1 in 78 then, and at that point?
Correct. At 1978, when the building was complete, the basic science departments moved over into predominantly the third floor of Medical Education Building 1. My laboratory, which I still house today, is the same place that I originated back in 78 on the fourth floor of Med Ed 1. So I've been there for quite a number of years in the same laboratory space, and thoughts of moving always get to me because you've kind of found a place, and but of course I'd probably find some things I've been looking for if I had to move because of all the years that things build up in the laboratory. But we moved in 1978, brand new facility. I call those years the honeymoon years because the state was very well appreciative of what we were doing and funded us for some new equipment. And so we were able to purchase some nice major pieces of equipment at that time to help the research move along. And I think it was because of that that the basic sciences have developed into first-rate research division here at the institution.
So you finally found a stable place at that point after moving around from Denton and River Plaza and so forth. At that point, were you, what was your position now? You were
at the time
professor?
we moved from, I was first hired as assistant professor. Mm-hmm. And at the time we moved to the Fort Worth campus, I was still assistant professor. It wasn't until 82 that I was promoted to associate professor. But I was still in the Department of Pharmacology, and we taught primarily medical pharmacology, but we, in addition to that, were teaching courses related to the graduate program that was housed on the University of North Texas campus. And all the basic science faculty had a joint appointment in the University of North Texas Department of Biomedical Sciences. We were a part of a master's program in biomedical sciences at the University of North Texas campus, as well as having students who were obtaining their PhD degree in the Department of Biology. We were able to have students and mentor students and train students under this program through the University of North Texas. So when we moved down to the Fort Worth campus, we indeed brought some students with us. So we had some graduate students working with our faculty in their research labs, as well as teaching graduate level courses while continuing our important job of teaching medical students.
And did that work real well? Do you think the relationship as far as the joint appointment and all went well with North Texas? Or
for a number of years, the relationship, I think, was very well. They pretty much let us design our own graduate program, even if it was through the Department of Biology. They allowed us to construct degree plans for all students independent of their requirements. So we enjoyed a good relationship with them. And over the years, we attracted more and more students into our program to the point where we had a large number of students being trained here on the TCOM campus, but were administered primarily through the University of North Texas graduate program.
I also see that you also have a numerous grants that you've received over the years you've been at the Health Science Center. Perhaps you could discuss some of those, and SLIC, I believe, was one I saw.
Okay.
It seemed to be rather interesting.
Well, at the time, again, during the years I've been here, I've been active in research. I've had grants from National Institutes of Health, American Heart Association, from the Army Research Office. I currently have 2 grants through the Army, one of which is a research training grant in which we train some students under this program. In addition, I've been involved in not only the research aspect of my own research. I've been involved in developing programs with a focus. Many years ago, 1980, we started a eye group, and this was a group of individuals who had similar interests in research related to the eye, and particularly in areas related to cataracts and to glaucoma. And we used to meet periodically and discuss our research. Over the years, that evolved into quite a bigger group, and we developed a strong interest in ocular biochemistry and ocular physiology. Here in Fort Worth is Alcon Laboratories. It's a pharmaceutical firm that deals primarily in ophthalmics. And we, at the time, back in as far back as 1978, when I first came, developed a relationship with them, with their interest in, of course, ocular preparations, and our interest in ocular research was a good match, and we developed a long-standing relationship. And perhaps I could touch a little bit more on that later when I get into, maybe if we get into a discussion on the graduate program, how that relationship has developed. But in terms of other programs that have evolved from this, in 1980, Dr. Edward Elko and myself applied for a training grant through the National Institutes of Health because this training grant was primarily deals with minority students and minority faculty. We had a strong interest in developing education for minority students. And one of the ways to do this is to bring minority faculty or faculty from minority institutions to our campus to enrich them in their research training so they can go back to that campus and develop programs for their students. In 1980, we applied for a minority hypertension research summer training grant. It was a 5-year grant that we were one of only 15 schools to receive the award, and we developed a program in partnership with several minority institutions within the state in which we brought faculty from that institution and some students to our campus to train during the summer and do research and take that back. We were renewed again for another 5 years, so from 1980 to 1990 we had 10-year support for this training program. Out of that has derived some major benefits. One of the individuals who started to work with us in 1982 continued his research interest with us, and particularly with my research laboratory. Since then, him and I combined on a number of research grants. He's from Jarvis Christian College, Dr. Abdul J. Mia, and we have, in fact, gotten funding for his institution for a number of grants as well. So now that he has a major program at Jarvis Christian College, which is a historically black college here in Texas, in which he has funding from both the National Institutes of Health, from the Army, from several programs in which to support minority students. we're working with him in trying to encourage a number of those students to go on for training in the graduate program. As we know, the numbers of minorities in master's and PhD programs are very small, and we need to increase those numbers, and we're trying with different programs to do this. And one of the things we saw was the fact that perhaps when we go into undergraduate schools to encourage students to go into science for careers, that we're starting too late, that we need to start a little bit younger. As you know, TCOM has some programs with high schools, such as the Adopt a School program that we work with, the high school apprenticeship program that we have, which encourages students to pursue careers in science and medicine. But back in 1989, I decided that even there, by high school, many students have already made up their mind as to what they want to do, and I think that we needed to attack some of the younger ages. And so the concept of a Science Learning and Investigational Center for Kids rose out of that, which is acronym is SLIC. And we developed a program whereby we bring in middle school students, 6th to the 8th grade, here to the campus, Health Science Center campus, and give them hands-on experience with various types of programs, from medicine, types of medicine programs, sports medicine, to actually what we call investigative studies, where they do hands-on types of science experiments. This turned out to be quite positive. Many of the teachers and students who participated just keep asking for more. And it's hard to keep up with all the demands that people and requests we have to run the program. But it's a good program. It's very exciting to do. We've included medical students to help us, graduate students, and after any one of these students has helped us with this program, they always comment that, hey, if you need help again, just give me a call, because this was great. They gave them an opportunity to try to explain what they do to 6th graders in a language that they would understand, and it was a challenge, I think, for them, but also a rewarding experience in seeing the young children and their excitement over what they were doing. We're trying to continue this kind of program with SLIC. We have joined a partnership with the Applied Learning Academy here in Fort Worth. This is a middle school that's just been developed this year here in Fort Worth. It has a new vision or a new mission, and that is to train students with more hands-on, more problem-based learning, that sort of educational experience. And we've hooked up as a partnership to help them with their science and health training, but also to help them in any way we can with any other aspects that they may have. So we're continuing to work with them and try to encourage and reinforce some of the curricula design they have, and whatever overlaps with our interest, we are going to help them with that. And they're real excited about it, and hopefully we'll see that develop into a nice program. So we're very much interested in working with community, working with not only students in college, but high school and middle school, and I'm sure soon we'll be looking at elementary school students as well, trying to get their interest into science and medicine. We just need to improve our skills and also to improve the knowledge transfer that occurs at those levels, because by the time they get into high school, many students are turned off by science and math, and we're trying to reinstill that excitement that many of us felt when we were in middle school or high school.
It sounds like you're definitely involved in the community as far as the school system. That must take up a lot of your time outside of here, and sounds like then SLIC is going to continue for a number of years from what you're saying.
Well, we hope to continue the program. We're looking for some support, financial support to continue that, so we can perhaps identify some individuals who will work primarily on those types of projects. We've applied for different grants right now. We have a grant pending at Howard Hughes Foundation, in which incorporates the SLIC program We called it START for the program that we sent to the Howard Hughes Foundation. Dr. James Caffrey has spearheaded that in physiology department, and myself as co-directors. And that stands for Science Teacher Advanced Research Training, START. And it brings science teachers from the Fort Worth Independent School District in for the summer to develop what we call, again, hands-on experiments that they could take back to the schools that they teach in to develop for their students. In addition, we're going to test those experiments on the Applied Learning Academy students so that we have a sort of testing ground for the students to try out these new experiments, hands-on type programs. And we call it a low-tech program. We want to develop these little take-home units so that these teachers can bring back to their schools using everyday types of material, because often schools can't afford all this high-tech stuff. But we can develop some nice, what we call low-tech experiments that demonstrate a particular problem or identify a particularly important aspect of science that they can work with and yet use everyday common materials. So it's going to be quite exciting if we get funded for that to put that program on.
Definitely. With all the acronyms, that probably takes up enough time just thinking of the acronyms. What other, would you like to discuss some other perhaps grants or research that you were doing at that time or continuing to do?
In addition to the research I do in the field of glaucoma, I'm personally involved in glaucoma research. We're looking at mechanisms whereby drugs which are used to treat glaucoma lower intraocular pressure. And so we have worked with a number of companies, including Alcon Laboratories, and testing some of the drugs that they develop and to see how they might work. I myself also have a patent on one series of drugs that I work with a company in Finland, which had a series of compounds which I thought were useful in lowering intraocular pressure, and it turned out that they indeed were. So we moved along and got that developed into a patent. I'm not sure they'll ever reach the marketplace, but they will serve as a basis to develop other drugs. We're also interested in some other aspects of ocular disease, ocular problems. In particular area we're interested in is wound healing in the cornea. The corneal epithelium, which is the outer layer of the cornea, when you injure that, it tends to repair itself and can do so very nicely. But there's another layer of cells on the inner side of the cornea endothelium, which when injured really does not heal itself very well, and the cells tend to spread out and they don't divide. And so we're in the process of studying various factors that may influence that ability of those cells to repair. So this will be an exciting area of research, we think, in the future. In addition to the area of research I do in the eye, I work on research in the kidney. Sounds like I'm working on two ends of the body, but they're very much alike, in particular relating to the glaucoma problem, which is mainly a problem of fluid movements in the eye. And so if you think of the kidney as fluid movements in that organ in which it takes fluid and removes it from the body and reabsorbs fluid and substances, they're pretty much the same kinds of mechanisms. And so I've been studying that actually for a number of years, I guess over 20 years now, looking at regulation of fluid and water transport in the kidney. And we're funded for that, excuse me, from the Army to look at this problem. A particular timing was the fact that I submitted an Army grant prior to Desert Storm, in which our soldiers were in an environment where they were losing fluid through evaporation because of the hot, dry climate. And our research project aimed at studying the mechanisms whereby the kidney reabsorbs fluid during times when they're deprived of water. And so this meshed very nicely with what the Army thought was interesting, I think, and as a result got funded, and then subsequently Desert Storm broke out. So it was kind of a prediction of what was to come, I guess. But we were glad that the Army thought it was useful for us to study this, and currently we just submitted a renewal for that grant, and hopefully the Army will have a continued interest in this area of research.
I never thought of the connections between the two, but I see your point now. In this, it's also at this point, you know, in the 80s and early 90s, when you were doing writing these grants and doing this research, or do you think this has aided in you in this becoming a health science center? Was that going to be a help in what you're doing? Is it important to what you're trying to do?
No question about it. I think in terms of development of the Health Science Center, particularly the graduate school, it's important to have a very active research program on the campus for training students, be it PhD students, or we have joint degrees, DO, PhD students, medical scientist training. A good, strong research component is important to any health science center. And I think through the 80s we had developed a strong, at least research component in the basic science departments. New faculty were hired who had very strong possibility of funding, or a number of them were hired who had research support on their way in. And this was important, particularly with regard to graduate student training, because the graduate student gets most of their training in the research laboratory and developing problems and working through those research problems. And without external research support, that wouldn't be possible. And I think it's because of that we were able to develop a very strong group of graduate students and a good reputation in terms of our ability to train these students. So I think that was the predecessor for going to become a health science center, because we developed a school which had approximately 70 graduate students in it even before we became a health science center. So we had 70 graduate students on the campus being trained here by TCOM faculty, that it was important then to say, well, I think we've developed enough that in becoming a health science center, we can have our own graduate school. And that helped tremendously in not only the planning of the graduate school, but also in the approval of that school by the coordinating board.
So you had the joint DO PhD at that time, before we became a health science center? You were in...
There was a joint DO PhD program that was arranged between, again, the Texas College of Osteopathic Medicine and the University of North Texas. So students were able to gain their PhD degree through the University of North Texas and their DO degree through Texas College of Osteopathic Medicine. So it was a possibility. It's a lot easier now that we're a health science center to develop this program, because we have direct administrative control over that joint degree. So it's a lot easier to work with students along these lines.
And the accreditation comes from the, is it the SACS, the SACS?
The accreditation, yes, the accreditation for the program will come from the Southern Association accreditation program, SACS. And right now we're in the process of getting all the material together for that review, which will occur in the fall. We're currently working under SACS approval through the University of North Texas program. Basically, it's the same program we've had through the University of North Texas, and it's just been transferred, or indeed follows the same guidelines as that one up at North Texas. And so I think we will be in good shape in terms of approval by SACS regarding our graduate school, because we've had such a long history with it while it was at the University of North Texas. So we're actively involved with that as well.
Now that you're dean of the graduate school, are you still able to continue with the research? And I know that you were on the selection committee to bring in another doctor that you work closely with.
Well,
Turner, I believe?
Yes, and he's the chairman of anatomy department. Yes, it's been an interesting evolution, I guess, in my career. I was actively involved in student training, as I mentioned before, both at the undergraduate, graduate level, and as well in high school, and et cetera. And so I've always had a strong interest in student training. When the position of assistant dean opened up for graduate student affairs here at TCOM, I was asked if I would be interested in applying for that position. And at first I hadn't given much thought, but
they wanted you to then.
with all my background, I said, yes, I think I can make contributions there. And so I applied for that position. Of course, little did I know I had to put the whole graduate program proposal together in a very short time to get it to the coordinating board. But I took that position, I guess, in August of, I'm trying to remember now, it must have been 92. And we, in a matter of months, put together proposals that we eventually sent to the coordinating board for approval. And we were lucky that everything fell into place, and fortunate that the coordinating board recognized that we've had this program for a number of years. So it was rather, to us anyway, straightforward in terms of getting that approval. It certainly took a lot of effort, and a lot of people put a lot of effort into it, not only myself, but many of the faculty who worked hard in getting that proposal together, meeting with the site visit team from the coordinating board, convincing them that we indeed should have this graduate school. The students who we had on campus at the time met with the site visit team and made a very positive impression on them, and that all made everything fit into place, and so we had a pretty good run with it through the various committees of the coordinating board to approval. And so that is now really behind us. We were officially approved the graduate school in July of '93, and then in October we're approved for the PhD program in biomedical sciences, which is a multidisciplinary PhD program that we have, very similar to the one I received for my PhD, and pretty much have designed it along those lines, that we have a broad-based training for these students before they specialize and go into a subdiscipline. So we're real happy with the way the things have gone so far. We have now 75 students in the program. We see that expanding. We haven't yet advertised to any great extent the program because it was just approved. We're in the process of getting a catalog together and those things, so that towards the end of this year we should be in full run, in which case I think we'll see the graduate program expanding to maybe 100 students.
My gosh, that's quite a few. Did any of these degrees have to come or were moved from North Texas, or you had started them here?
Well, the master's degree in biomedical sciences was the program that was housed on the University of North Texas at the onset. Our faculty had appointments in that Department of Biomedical Sciences and were graduate faculty at the University of North Texas. At the time we requested a new program, a PhD program in biomedical sciences. We also requested that the Department of Biomedical Sciences housed at the University of North Texas campus be moved under the Health Science Center, and at the same time established a graduate school of biomedical sciences. In addition, we moved all the courses associated with that biomedical sciences master's program to the Health Science Center graduate school, and that was approved by the coordinating board. And we had there were 57 courses that we transferred from the University of North Texas to our campus, which shows you the extent of which our involvement was in the graduate training. We were teaching 57 courses on the North Texas campus, and those were transferred by the coordinating board. So it was quite extensive, and now we've added additional 30 for the PhD level, and we have probably around 87 courses for the master's and PhD program in biomedical sciences, which is, again, quite extensive.
Sounds like your job then is fairly easy to do then.
I wish it was.
How do you see, I'm curious, this Health Science Center, how do you see it as being different from some of the others that are in Texas, such as Southwestern and Dallas and A&M? Or does it kind of fall under the same lines as the rest of them?
Well, I think you have to realize that the mission of this Health Science Center is somewhat different than the other schools in the state. Our mission is to train, initially, to train physicians, osteopathic physicians who have their, at least one of their major emphasis is in primary care medicine. They practice rural medicine. We have a number of our graduates practicing in small towns, so that the evolution of the graduate school as part of this overall mission is somewhat different from the other ones. We decided to go with a multidisciplinary program, which is in biomedical sciences, which differs somewhat than Southwestern, which has very selective PhD programs. Again, showing us that the training here is with a foundation or a base that's more holistic, if I can use that for the graduate school, because of the fact that our students have to take a broad-based training in the basic sciences before they specialize. And it allows our students to be more rounded in terms of their educational experiences and research training. And I think we'll be training students for what I see as the need in the future in biotechnology and the way science is going now. One can't just be a pharmacologist. One can't just be a biochemist. You have to have the whole picture in order to appreciate the realm of the science work that's going on, particularly molecular biology, how it interplays in all of these various disciplines. So we're trying to give the student the training they'll need to meet the demands for scientists tomorrow. And I think this is where we're going with our program. And it meshes very nicely, I think, with the mission of the Health Science Center and the Texas College of Osteopathic Medicine in training physicians who are broad-based training, have a good foundation in primary care. If they then indeed specialize, they'll be better for it because they'll have the base training that they would need as a primary care physician. And of course, with the way the health reform is going, I think we're sitting very nicely on these crossroads because we have been developing the kinds of physicians and scientists that are going to be needed in this new program that will come out in the next few years.
Sounds like then the other schools will have to do some adaptation then for the new program, whereas the Health Science Center is looking really good then.
Well, I think we're in a unique opportunity because we're developing rather than changing. And I think these other institutions will have to do some changing and reorientation of their programs, where we're in the position of developing programs to start off to meet the needs that we have identified. And through strategic planning that maybe we can, in fact, meet and develop those programs as we go. So we're in a nice position. We're looking at other types of programs beyond the graduate school and the medical school to look at what are those programs that are needed by the community, by the state, and by the nation to meet the healthcare problems. We're in the process of developing an interest in a program in public health. And one of the uniquenesses about that program was the fact that it's come from the community. We have a steering committee made up of community leaders who in fact set forth the mission, set forth some strategic planning for the school, so that instead of the institution just sitting back and thinking what the community needs, the community is telling us what they need, and then we'll develop programs to meet those needs. And I think we're at a good point in our history to go forward and to meet those kinds of healthcare needs of the community and the state.
Well, throughout all this, are you still able to keep up with your research on the eye and so on? Or is that kind of put on hold now with the 87 courses and so forth?
I've been fortunate to have some very good people working for me in my research lab. And this year, they'll certainly be the first to tell you they haven't seen much of me down in the lab. But we keep contact weekly and daily so that I keep on top of what's going on in the laboratory. I'm not there physically, but I'm there in terms of guiding what is going on. They're very excellent people, and so they're able to and capable of carrying on in my absence. No, we're continuing to do research, actually going into some exciting areas of molecular biology. So we're try to keep pace with what the new advances are, and I look forward to continuing to do my research. I hope I can continue to do that throughout my tenure, because I think it helps being dean of the graduate school that you have a feeling for what the students are going through. And if you have your own students, I think you can understand some of the problems and the situations not only the students face, but the faculty face with regard to student training. So I think it helps from that standpoint to keep a finger on what is going on at the level of the research labs and the students involved in that training by actively being involved yourself. And hopefully I can continue to do that in the future. I may have to clone myself, but it's getting more and more difficult, but I'm trying.
It's like there needs to be 5 or 6 of you to do all this. What do you see as your role in the future of the health science? And if we could project out, maybe you don't want to do that. I'm just curious as to what you see your role being, say, next couple of years. Will you continue where you are?
Well, I think, again, development of the graduate school has been very important and important to me in getting it going. I see we're just getting started, so I would continue in my role as Dean of the Graduate School. We're bringing on a public health initiative, and that currently is involved with the graduate school. How that shapes out down the road, we don't know. Maybe their own school of public health, depending on how the coordinating board sees this develop. We're hoping that that's the case, but in any event, we are trying to meet some of the needs by doing this through the graduate school. And there'll be other opportunities, I'm sure, down the road and other programs that we'll be bringing in that I'll have some input into that development. And so I look forward to an exciting time here. So I will give my input as Dean of the Graduate School wherever they see that I might have some important contribution.
Do you have any other things you'd like to bring up before we let you go? Any other areas of interest maybe I missed? I'm sure I missed quite a few, it sounds like.
I think we've covered quite a bit. I think we've covered some of the early history and the development of some of these programs. I think we need to here work on developing some more of the joint programs like the DO PhD program. We'd like to develop that more. We need some medical scientists out there, particularly those who will come back and work within the Health Science Center. There aren't many DO physicians who have research training. So it's hard to select those individuals for an academic institution, a health science center, because they're few and far between. We're kind of growing our own. We're developing a number of DO PhD students who have gone through the program, have graduated, have done residency training, and hopefully we could attract some of them back to the Health Science Center to work in clinical departments to develop a strong research base there. We'd like to see more students pursue those joint degrees. If we develop a public health program, a master's in public health, this might be a nice joint degree program for a physician to get, a joint DO MPH. These individuals are going to be needed certainly down the road where public health and preventive medicine will become very important with regard to managed care and some of the new health programs that will be coming out.
I just thought when a DO could just walk in and teach a class. I had no idea about the joint degrees and all that. I really appreciate. Are there any other final remarks that you'd like to make?
No, it's just been exciting for me to be a part of the institution that was growing. I think that was one of my initial reasons for coming here, because literally when I visited, as I said, the first floor of MedEd 1 was just being laid down, and so that was kind of coming in on the ground floor, and I certainly did and appreciate the opportunity for working within the school and helping it develop, and hopefully I've made some contributions along those ways, and I just feel we're in even a more exciting time right now as a health science center with lots of opportunities to come. So I look forward to an exciting time ahead of us.
Well, from what you've said here today and what I have gathered in what research I was able to do before this, definitely couldn't have done a lot of this without your help and assistance. And I really appreciate you taking the time out of your extremely busy schedule. I'm sure the other 5 or 6 of your clones are hard at work now, but to come talk with us. It's been extremely valuable. And again, I want to thank you, Dr. Yorio, for your time today, as well as the many years you've put in with the UNT Health Science Center. And
Well, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much, and have a good afternoon.
You too.